Look, Riley, you know that I wouldn't call you for just anything, right? I promise you, this is big.
I told you. I don't do that anymore.
I mean, come on, you haven't even heard the job yet.
This was a mistake.
Riley, what if I told you that this score could cover your mom's treatments? And I'm not just talking a month or two, I'm talking all of it.
What's up, guys? We are back with another episode of the DBS podcast. This is a special episode because you can see we are here on the DBS couch. I got Dylan and Tagen with me, and we are going to go over movie number 19. That is right, we have made 19 micro-budget movies, and today we're going to go over some tips and tricks we have learned making these 19 movies to make sure your production is as smooth as possible. Now, Devil's Hostage was the craziest movie we have shot so far. It was the highest budget movie we have shot, and there was gore, there was blood, there's special effects, there was a ton of actors. We shot this all in 9 days with an under $50,000 budget, and we did it very easily. There was no real problems. I had enough time to direct the actors. The actors were never rushed. And it really was one of the better productions, if not the best. All right, it was the best production we've had. And honestly, I'm really proud of that because it's a lot of stuff that you guys don't see is how difficult these productions are. I wish I could have 30 days, and instead we don't. We're pretty much rushing every single hour that we get on set, and it sucks. But we have learned how to make this a lot better, and honestly, it's helped performances. It's helped with special effects because the minute you start to get behind, I have to start to run and gun. And when you start to run and gun, you start to sacrifice everything. I have to sacrifice shots. We have to sacrifice effects. And, the actors can feel it. You feel that pressure, that time crunch. Everyone gets a little bit nervous. It's not a lot of fun. And I really think the last 3 movies that we have made we didn't have as much of that pressure, and everyone's relaxed. It's a lot easier, and you just get better performances. So today we're going to go over day by day and how we kind of got there, and some tips and tricks that you guys can use on your own production, stuff that we've learned to make sure that you guys are not rushing and you're not, going through your stuff and you're having to sacrifice a lot of things. So I'm going to start off with day 0, and I'm going to turn it over to Dylan because immediately when Dylan gets here, Dylan, what happened to your car?
Yeah, so we had parked the car at Brendan's place, and he told us that the parking was going to be all set up and everything, throwing him under the bus here a little bit. It wasn't even really his fault. They hooked us up with the parking, and then we go down the next morning, and the truck's fucking gone. Oh, wait, can I cuss this early in it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Start that whole thing over.
Okay.
Because I don't know how loud this is going to be.
Blow out the things. All right, so we get here, day 0. We get the parking squared away, go to bed. Next morning, we wake up. We go to check out the truck. It has been towed, completely gone. I didn't know that right away, so I start calling the cops, trying to see if my truck's been stolen. Luckily, it hadn't. It had just been towed. So we had to go pay like $250 to get the truck out of the impound because it was parked illegally, whatever. Big wrench in it early on.
Yeah, so usually with all these shoots, something goes wrong immediately. I think it was $200, or I gave Tagen $200, but she gave me only $150. Was the towing thing? She kept $50 herself. She totally forgot that I remember that, but I never forget anything like that. So Tagen does owe me $50 at some point.
The towing thing?
But for basically, you did. You owe me $50. It was $200 out of the ATM.
Yeah,
and
it charged me. I could only take out 180.
Yeah, stories. So basically, though, everything goes wrong on the first day. It just happens every time. This is why we do is day 0. We want to make sure that all the actors, the crew, and everyone gets there first. And I know you don't want to pay for travel days, and I know you don't want to basically waste a day, but the travel days and day 0s have been our biggest thing that we've done. The actors come in, and we usually just get food. We basically, do some team bonding stuff. They get comfortable because everyone's so nervous on these shoots. My job is just to make sure they feel comfortable, and going through there. So, Tagen, you get, into the location. We kind of walk through all this stuff. the first thing we do is kind of figure out where we want to set up the special effects. How this is stuff, how it's going to, go down. We walk through the script, we block it out because you have to pick the exact place that works for both me shooting the movie and Tagen for the special effects. So you kind of want to go over how we kind of choose these locations and, you know, kind of go into how we kind of have an open discussion on how we pick these spots in these movies.
Sure. So a lot of the time, like Brendan said, we'll go into the location and do a walkthrough first and see what kind of setup we have, because we also have to go through set design as well, and kind of make it look like we want it to look, and also props that tie into the kills and stuff. We have to make sure that the placement makes sense, and also as the characters move through the house, especially with this one where we're kind of cheating it a little bit, where they may be going into one location, but the bedroom's not actually where the bedroom really is, and we're kind of making it look like it is in a different spot. We have to make sure we're going through it and being specific about where these people are going to end up, and if we show the location earlier in the movie and if it's going to make sense. Um, I think one of the biggest discussions we had was where to do one of the effects in the ankle, um, and it was a staircase or under a table. And logistically, we had a little bit of debate because there was making sure that the effect looked really cool on camera for the viewer, but also made sense for the viewer as far as like, would it be realistic for someone to be able to do this? But we also have to take into consideration like where people can fit and where we can best film this for it to make sense at the same time. So balancing all of those kind of aspects at once can be a little bit tricky, but doing that full walkthrough at the beginning always kind of makes it a little bit easier, so we have a plan ahead of time before we actually get into filming it, and then they're like, "Ah, fudge, I don't know what we're doing."
I mean, the walkthrough is big because we always run into continuity issues and like we run out of rooms. Obviously our locations are on budget. If you've seen our movies, we've had some nice locations, but if you're filming a 90-minute movie and this one took place all in one house, you run out of stuff. And we've had to cheat a lot of stuff in the Shapeshifter movie. We ran out of rooms and it was kind of difficult. And I think that we learned to just kind of go through the walkthrough and kind of block that out immediately. Anytime that you put stuff off to the last minute, it never works out. So going through that and then Tagen, I wanted the staircase with the ankle stab just because it would have been easier for me to shoot there. Shooting on the ground is just a little bit difficult. But I took Tagen's advice, which I usually do. It takes me a while to get there. I'll admit that. It took me about 2 days, but it was a better shot. It made sense logistically in how the movie worked out. But I mean, we could have went there and just ignored it and kind of threw it under the rug and waited to the last minute to kind of go over this stuff. And then when the last day, when we're all kind of scrambling to do this effect, we could have been having this argument. It's really not an argument; it's a heated discussion. Um, and that would have just freaked everybody out. On day 0, there's no pressure, there's no time pressure, so it's nice to go through all that stuff. Then we're all on the same page. There's no issues. She had all she needed to do. She knew where everything was going. We walked through all the practical effects, and then I walked through with Dylan to just make sure we're on the same page of where we're gonna light this stuff. We had a scene where they have to steal stuff from the cabinets, and the general idea of where they have to kind of go around. So that was pretty much day 0. I don't think there was anything too crazy other than we brought the actors in. And then Dylan can kind of go over, his meetings. Communication is going to be your biggest thing. I always want to make sure that Dylan and Tagen understand what I'm doing every single day, every single hour. We have a plan for everything because we still had to I had to get a picture. Dylan and Tagen have to go get all their stuff that they need, and we have to still go shopping. So there's a lot of stuff we had to do. And we want to make sure that they understand what they have to do, and then the actors understand. The actors have to know everything that they're about to do for the next day and the coming days, because we don't want them, going through other pages of the script or kind of not knowing what they need to do. communication is honestly the biggest thing. And it's taken us a long time to get there. When we first started, it was a mess. And, to testament to Dylan Tagen, it's got a lot better. So, Dylan, why don't you go over like the nightly meetings and how we kind of made this tradition of just at the end of the every day we have a meeting, and then at the end of or the beginning of each day we have a meeting where we just kind of go over everything that's going to happen that day.
Yeah, so I think it started pretty soon after we started doing the nightly posts. If you guys see on my story or the DBS one, each night we'll cheers beer. So I think that's kind of where it initially started. Is we had everybody in one place for that anyway. So then we started throwing a meeting in there where we kind of talked about this is what you got to be prepared for tomorrow. This is our threat level on how desperately we need to get through all this stuff. Which usually it's always very high. We like to keep high pace even early in the week, just so that way later in the week we're not like fucking DEFCON 1. We're done. Like we have to get it done. So we do a meeting the night before day 0. We do a meeting just kind of getting them ready for the week. We try to let them know in all their one-on-one meetings leading up to production what to expect. And then once we get there, just another final reminder on day 0, we're locking in, we're getting this thing done. And then we talk about what we're doing day by day. And then we follow it up. Then the day of, doing a meeting before we start shooting, just making sure everybody's in the right headspace, got the right energy levels, and all equally motivated to get through the day as the next person, just so we can just kind of crank through it.
So that was pretty much day 1. Everybody got early sleep. And I checked the equipment. Tagen made sure she had all our prosthetics and the special effects, and Dylan made sure he had everything and was on the same page with me. We had all the batteries and everything charging. Day 0, again, we used to do this where we would drive up and start shooting that same night, and it's just a mess. The actors' performances, they were nervous. It takes them a while to get going. I was nervous. My shots were terrible. It was just not good. The day 0 lets everyone relax. It's like, okay, we're really doing this. We're really making another movie. Get a good night's sleep and then go. Because day 1, we had to go to Andrew's house, and Andrew is a bachelor and he lives in a bachelor pad. So we had to make this look like it was a mother's house and a daughter's house who live together. The mom does have cancer. So we had to take Andrew's masculine bachelor pad and make it very feminine. And I think Tagen did a fantastic job of this. The devil is in the details with these movies. We can't cheat a huge budget. It's just impossible for us. But my job as making these movies is take our budget and try and make it look like $1 million production. And we get better with each one, but it's still very, like, to make something like that and make it look like a Netflix movie is very, very hard. But what we can do is we can buy calendars and we can buy little things, and small little details do add up. And I think Tagen did a phenomenal job of flipping this within a couple hours, going from, Andrew's pad to basically a house or an apartment with a mom and a daughter. So, Tagen, you want to kind of go over how you kind of did that in the thought process to basically flip it yin and yang, basically, is what happened.
Sure. Well, to start, thankfully for us, at least for the most part, I will say Andrew does have a lot of neutral decor once you take away like the skeletons and Donkey Kong stuff. Uh, but kind of like Brendan said, it's like we can't like be bringing in giant pieces of furniture and like doing this giant reset of a set. We kind of have to try and figure out how we can work with what we have. So it's thinking about the small things that we can add to the already existing just to make it fit a little bit more. So for this one, yeah, it was like the calendar with the specific schedule and paying attention to the detail as far as like the mom has cancer, what a real schedule for someone with that condition has to go through on a daily basis. It's a mom and a daughter living in this apartment, adding things like floral pillows and floral bedspreads, picture frames on the walls of just them together from they were younger. We used, I think, both Deb and Madison provided photos from their past as well, which really helps because seeing that character in a real life situation like that always adds more depth. So it's just the little tiny things that we can add. The kitchen was good. We, I think, grabbed some Brussels sprouts that Andrew had in his freezer for God knows how long and threw them on a tray and had Deb seasoning those up and cooking those. And we filled the pot with water and had her turn the stove actually on so there was steam like coming up. So just like anything you can do to bring the production value up with those little tiny details is always beneficial.
I mean, it turned out great. We shot both the intro and the outro, or the epilogue for this movie, and right off the bat, I don't really like to start the actors with heavy emotional scenes, but this was the best time for Deb LeClaire to come in, and she did a fantastic job as the mom. Tagen did a great job with her makeup, which I'll let her talk about in a second. But I like to start the actor slower. This is a huge emotional scene, so props to Madison and Deb to pull this off. It was the only time that we could do this one. It was the only time we had access to Andrew's apartment. Um, and they came in and did a great job. So we knocked this out pretty quick. Taken, you want to kind of go over taking Deb LeClaire and making her look like a cancer patient because she has to, in the epilogue, we started backwards. We shot the epilogue where she's happy, she's healthy, she's full of energy. And then we applied the makeup to Deb to make her look like this sickly cancer patient. And honestly, I wrote this character when we first started as a plot device to make you feel bad for the main character. And I know writing, you shouldn't use plot devices, but we make our 15 movies. Sometimes you got to just move this plot along and make it clear of like what we're doing. Because another thing that happens to us a lot is we confuse people. And so she has to go make a bad decision. She has to rob a house, right? And that's a bad character flaw. I can see 1 star is why is she doing this? If she didn't rob the house, all this bad stuff wouldn't happen. Got it. So how we do that, we make someone, she's doing this for a reason, which is to help her mother. And it went from plot device to something really, really, really good. Probably one of the better scenes we've ever shot, which is kind of crazy because it did help with the makeup, the wardrobe, and obviously the acting between Madison and Deb. The pre-production they did was absolutely fantastic. And the scene was phenomenal. And immediately in this movie, you get the intro hook, which is the bad stuff, the paranormal stuff that's going to happen. And then you get the emotional scene. And this, to me, was the first time we've actually done something really dramatic. It felt like a drama movie, which is really cool to kind of play around with because it's us expanding outside of our zone of like pop scare horror. So, Tegan, do you want to go and just talk about how you applied the makeup and made her go from this, beautiful, young, vibrant mother to, someone very sickly?
Yeah. So with turning her into kind of like this sickly patient, a lot of it kind of tied in together. For one, wardrobe was a huge aspect. I mean, obviously, we had her wearing like very bright, like happy colors in the beginning, and then we put her in like the head wrap and the pajamas, something like loose, baggy, make her look like she's just trying to be comfortable. And then as far as the makeup goes, it's really good when we always shoot in low light, which the scene was shot in low light because with that, you don't have to do too much. You can let the shadows from the low light, like, kind of accentuate the natural features. So we just did some, like, deepening of her natural, like her jawline, her cheekbones, her around her eyes, like, it's very easy to kind of just deepen those areas of the face with a little bit of, like, a dark eyeshadow. We used cream colors in this, particular scene. We also added some reddening red to the bottom of her waterline and around her nose just because, when you're constantly sick and you're wiping your nose and you're wiping your mouth, those areas tend to get the most sensitive. Same thing with around the lips. We just made them a little bit lack of color and a little bit drier, just to kind of show that she's a little dehydrated. She's not feeling her greatest. But again, that low light and everything, the wardrobe all together, like kind of pulled it into one seamless look. And then, of course, Deb's acting. Like, doesn't matter how good the makeup or the wardrobe is, but if you're not playing the part, it's not going to sell it. So she did a great job.
That she did, and it was absolutely fantastic. Big shout out to Deb because she came in, she had 1 day to do this, she got it done, and she left. And we are going to have her back again because she did such a great job. So we finished this scene, and we were ahead of schedule at this point. So then we went to do something that we love to do here at DBS, guerrilla filmmaking. And we had a scene where the main character in this movie has to go to the park, and there is a park bench scene to detail how they're basically going to rob this house. We were in the middle of Atlanta when we were shooting this. And any time that you go outside of a house on land that you do not own, this was just a public park, so we could film there, but you attract attention. And it's always interesting when we do this. I, for one, enjoy guerrilla filmmaking. I think it's kind of fun. At the same time, we have to make sure everybody is safe and the equipment is safe, and we are not having people yelling at us or doing that kind of stuff. Because when people see the camera and they see the lights and they see everything, they know we're making a movie. They want to be in the movie, or they want to just drive around and disrupt our movie, which is a huge thing. If you are the person who drives around in circles, revving your engine while we're filming a movie, or you're honking your horn, or you're yelling, I mean, there is a special place in hell for you. I'm just saying that right now. So, Dylan, do you want to kind of go into how we operate as a guerrilla filmmaker, or as a guerrilla filmmakers, and how we don't recommend you do this? We always say make sure you basically go and have a location that is completely secured. But for this one, it was a short little scene. There's a park right next to the rental location. I thought it was worth it. We've done it before in small little scenes. Again, don't shoot a whole movie in a park. Not a good idea. If you've seen Cold Grave, we rented that forest area off, so we had it to ourselves. There's no one to bother you, because it is not easy. It is difficult. It is stressful for everybody. Dylan, kind of go over how we operate with guerrilla filmmaking.
Yeah, so for this, we'll find a spot that we want to film in. Oftentimes, I think my earliest guerrilla filmmaking experience with DBS was for Horror in the Forest. That one, we had some interviews we had to do in different spots. So we just kind of drove around until we found something that looked cool, popped out of the truck, recorded what we needed. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Like, we'd have loud-ass trucks driving by in the middle of takes that would ruin the audio, so then we'd have to relocate and find a different one. For this one, we knew that we wanted a park bench. So earlier in the day, we kind of took note of where some of the parks were. I don't think we ended up even using those. We found one that was right around the corner. So Brendan went ahead over there to kind of scope it out. I got all the actors up in the car, and then we go over there to start filming. The hard part becomes when it's nighttime and you have a gigantic LED panel. Basically a spotlight being like, we're filming a movie over here, come check us out. Like, makes things a little bit more interesting, especially if you're in an unfamiliar area, because I think we did 2 nights of filming at this park, because the first night we were there, we were filming, and we had a car that kept driving by. They weren't really doing anything, but they were driving by really, really slow, and it got to the point where it seemed pretty sketchy because they had parked their car and were on their phone a bunch. So we decided to pack up. When we do the guerrilla filmmaking, we usually try to stay as light as possible, so that way if a situation does arise, we can get everybody and all the equipment out in less than like a minute. So we only had one light. Brendan had the camera on him. Actors didn't have any crazy props for the scene. It was just them. So when I got a bad feeling about it, we just grabbed the light, grabbed the camera, everybody gets in the cars, and we are out of there. Came back again later in the shoot to do the rest of that scene, and we had people that were just hanging out at the park in the middle of the night. They were fine, but again, there's always a little level of sketch, because you don't know what they're there for, what they'll do when they see us there. So always a little bit of a gamble. So definitely proceed with caution if guerrilla filmmaking something you intend to do, or if you have short scenes that need it. Doesn't matter. It could be 30 seconds. A lot can happen in 30 seconds. So just stay vigilant, stay ready, and make sure that you can get out of that as fast as possible.
And so that was the first day of principal shooting. We shoot, and one thing how we stay on schedule is I try and shoot 12 hours no matter what. We're going to shoot 12 hours of me actually getting the actors and pressing the record button. That's when I start the clock. And I make it very clear we're going to shoot for 12 hours every single day. And there will be times where I just don't want to do it anymore, and we'll finish with 10 or 11 hours. We don't do that anymore. Tagen is the one to be like, no, we are going to go till 12. If we finish all our stuff, we continue to add stuff until we get to 12 hours. We will film for 12 hours every single day. This is the number one biggest piece of advice I have. Since we have been doing this, we have never really been in a bad position. I would say Echoes of Evil, when we did that movie, we stopped at 10 hours, we stopped at 9 hours, and we got ourselves in trouble. Since we have started shooting 12 hours a day, and that's not getting the actors ready and being ready to go. It's I press record, that's when that clock starts. Because there is a lag from when you guys are like, all right, we're about to start shooting to when you actually start shooting, because it takes to get everyone ready and everything ready to go, to get that momentum going, is a process. But we shot this day from 2 p.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning, and we got a ton of footage. We got the intro scene done. We got the outro scene done. We got half of the park bench scene, which is a super long scene as well, done. So the first day was an absolute success. So day number 2, we went into it, and we needed another location to basically scout the house. Now, every once in a while, with filmmaking, well, not every once in a while, 99% of the stuff that happens to you is bad in indie filmmaking. It's just not good. Every once in a while, I get lucky. And we got lucky because there was a nice church parking lot across from the location. This would allow us to do, we had a couple scenes where they have a parked car and they're scouting the house. And I was just going to do it in a random location, and they just kind of cut to an establishing shot of the house, so it looked like they're looking at the house. We got lucky. We had a parking garage right across from us, and it was gated, and it was perfect. And I'll tell you, Dylan is really, really good at closing deals. And this is something, honestly, you should either learn how to close deals yourself, or you should have someone do it for you, which Dylan does for me. Have a Dylan, because he can go to any location and get these things done. And the first thing we said is, hey, can you go over there and can you talk to them about letting us just, if we make a donation to this church, can we, use this location? And it would just, again, we go from guerrilla to we actually have permission to shoot here. We get all our signed documents. It's a win-win. And we make a nice donation to the church so that, the gods can make us have a good movie. So it's a triple win. So Dylan, I'm going to turn it over to you, because whenever you're an indie filmmaker and you go ask to shoot at a location or use a location, they come at you with a ridiculous price. And I think in this case, we needed to use it for maybe 8 hours. They wanted, I think, $1,000 or $1,500. And they always do this because people they think movies, they think $1 million movies. They think, you're going to shoot like the next crazy Need for Speed movie here. They think we're professionals, and we're not, and we have no money. So Dylan, how do you kind of address this issue of, getting these people down from, all the way up in the sky to basically our budget that we have?
Lie. No, I'm just kidding. I went over there on day 1 and didn't really know where I was going. I kind of walked around this church awkwardly for like 10 minutes until I found the correct door. And even then, it just led me to a corridor, and I just found the first person I saw, and I said, hey, I'm looking for the administration offices. And they were like, oh, what for? And I was like, oh, just question about using the parking lot. And so they went and found the person I needed to speak to. Her name was Sister. What was her name? Sister. No names. But they found the person I needed to speak to, and I kind of explained, hey, we're filming a movie. We're staying across the street. We need to have a scene where they're talking about the house, and this spot would be perfect. The only thing about it, because we would have just guerrillaed it if we could, was that they had a gate that locked after the last person from the church left. So we weren't able to, just guerrilla it. So it was this or nothing. And she was like, oh, like, what's the movie about? Obviously, going to a church and saying devil's hostage isn't the best idea. So omit certain details if you have to. It's not the best, but, we just told them it was a movie about somebody breaking into a house. Not a lie. We're all good. But, of course, as Brendan mentioned, they like to go for high numbers. This church had a very specific circumstance also that led them to believe that we could pay $1,000. They had a actual full budget movie film there the week prior that paid them a pretty good amount, and so she thought it was the same across the board. I said, not really sure if we're going to be able to do that. Let me go talk to the big boss, and I'll come back to you tomorrow with a new answer. So then we came back on day 2 before we started shooting, made it look all official. I had my DBS polo on. Brendan probably had a UCF shirt. But anyway, we went in there, made it look legit, told her that I had given him the full rundown, and she was like, we were thinking 1,000. What's the counter offer? And it's kind of like the thing where it's whoever talks first loses. It's kind of true, because we just kind of sat there and we're like, not going to be able to do 1,000, probably on the much lower end of that spectrum. And then I believe she came back at us with, what was it, Brendan, like 150? Something like 150. Me and Brendan looked at each other like we were pondering about it, but we had already kind of decided that that's the price that we wanted it to be at. So we were like, yeah, we can make that work. Locked it in, and then they had somebody set up to come make sure we could get in, and then lock the gates after we were done, after the allotted time that we had agreed on. So every now and then, stars align, you get a really good deal like that, where people are more willing to work with you and aren't, locked in what they think they should be getting for it. A lot of times people will work with you if you just talk to them. So biggest advice, just talk to people.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good because we knocked all that stuff out pretty quickly. That was really good. So now we have 2 really good days. That was 2 12-hour days. We were very well ahead of schedule on this one. And then day 3 was basically us getting the actors into the house. All the stuff up until this moment, except for Madison Mess, had the scenes with Deb, which are pretty intense. Everything else that we have done so far was general conversation scenes. We had them walking around, scouting out the house, all really easy stuff. I like to have the actors start off easy, then peak in the middle of the shoot, especially with special effects, and then end on a downhill slope. This is so much better. When we first started out, we started off, high stuff, low stuff, and then we pile everything on the end, and it never worked out. The actors are going to be nervous. I'm going to be nervous. Everybody's nervous. It's a thing. I've made 19 movies. I still am absolutely scared to death of making these things just because of how crazy this is. And I know everything that could possibly go wrong. So start your actors off slow. In the middle of the shoot is where you want all the special effects and the crazy scenes and just the intense stuff. Because if you do mess it up, you still have time. The minute you are putting all this stuff to the end, you're going to be rushing, and you're not going to have a good time. So, day 3 now, we basically had them come into the house. They start exploring the house. It's all easy stuff. And, we're just kind of getting into where we need to go. I want Tagen to talk about continuity because this is where it starts to get difficult. We live in this house. We live in this location. And when they come into it, everything has to be in the same spot. But when we wake up in the morning, everyone's using dishes, everyone's using, the table. We had a picture fall in this movie and it fell on the ground. And that couldn't be touched because it was actually used for a special effect later on in the movie. We do struggle with continuity. I think it's worse in found footage movies because it's harder for me to kind of fix that with the way we shoot now with cinematic, especially this movie. We used flashlights to light this. That was it. So you really don't know where you are or what's going on. But continuity, again, we're trying to cheat this budget. We're trying to take our small budget and make it look like $1 million. Having continuity issues pulls the audience out of it. Everyone knows about the Game of Thrones Starbucks cup, and I know Last of Us had some like actors that they, or I think it was just like PAs or someone was just chilling in the woods and they ended up with some shots. We don't want that kind of stuff. And honestly, continuity is like one of the hardest things we struggle with. Tagen does a really good job with it. So Tagen, why don't you kind of go over when we dropped that picture, what was procedure, how you told the actors and everyone to basically operate with the house during the day, because, they have their 46 hours of just rest time before we start shooting again. And you can even highlight who the biggest offender is on set of breaking continuity.
Finally. So as far as like the day-to-day goes, I think the first thing we do pretty much, we always kind of pre-prep. We know, or we have learned from past sets, cooking and like kitchen is always the hardest thing because people are gonna want to eat, people are gonna want to make food. So like reducing anything we can in those areas is always like the hardest thing for us. We have moved to like paper plates, paper cups, and plastic utensils. Not the most eco-friendly, but it is so much easier at the end of the night for everyone to just throw their stuff away rather than having to worry about someone doing dishes constantly. That's a job that no one wants to have. Um, Certainly not me. And same thing with cooking. Like, if we're cooking a whole bunch of stuff and making a whole bunch of dishes, no one wants to have to clean that up after themselves or after anyone else at the end of the night. So just kind of moving to anything disposable is always good. And then having those meetings when we first get into the house, at the end of the night, and in the morning, just gently reminding everyone that, we are a small set. It's just a 3-man crew. So, we don't have set people who come in and just constantly reset the set every morning. Those people are us. So you have to be aware of where you're putting down your cups and where you're putting down your plates and your personal items. So we kind of try to remind everyone, we do film in rooms as well. So it makes it a little bit hard because while we say keep all personal effects in your room, we do kind of end up using the rooms as sets also. So it's always about just trying to stay as organized as possible, keep everything in your suitcase, try to work out of your suitcase or your bags. That way, if we have to get in your room or move something, we could throw it under your bed or throw it in the closet. I think one of the big things too is, you know, if we end up filming your bag in the closet, your bag is now part of set. So we have to just be aware of that. Another big thing is taking photos and videos. Right before we start filming a scene, we'll take videos of it. I have started doing a shared album where we'll take photos of what everything looks like continuity wise and share that with each other so that we're all on the same page. So if I can't be there, they have the photos as well. The picture frame was a pain because we had all that fake rubber glass on the floor. So it wasn't even just the broken picture frame and the pieces, it was all this like fake glass that if you slightly moved it, it's gonna move all over the floor. So we took some painter's tape and just blocked that whole area off. We got lucky where the staircase was kind of in the middle of the house, so you could go get to both sides of the house with that one staircase, but that's not always the case. So that's kind of where blocking came into as far as making sure that it was a good placement for it. Um, but yeah, always just kind of reminding people as we're getting ready to film, making sure everyone is aware, like, hey guys, we are filming in these rooms. Make sure all your personal effects are out. And yeah, our biggest offender is the director himself, but it's okay. I forgive him for the most part.
She forgives me when I cut her paycheck. Um, so when you're on set, there's one thing I want to highlight is there's two variables that affect me, and Dylan acts as a producer, and I act as a producer as well. Dylan just doesn't know the numbers as much as me, and it's also my money. So it's a little bit of I'm trying to relay information to him. There's two variables. It's time and money. Those are the two things we have. Once you get on set, everything up until you get it on set is money. It's a money problem. It's how do we keep the budget as low as we possibly can. Once you're on set, it's a time issue. Once that clock starts, you have to be out of that location. The actors have to go back. It's time. So you have to, when you're on set, I sacrifice, or it's a balancing act between money and time. The biggest thing we have an issue with is food. Food is a huge part of our budget. And we've gone from, going and doing large Publix runs to having Chef Dylan on set, cooking meals, to what we kind of figured out now, and I'll have Dylan speak to it. But, when we first started out going to Publix, it's a cheaper option. Everyone kind of gets their snacks. We had a large amount of waste. We were just not using everything. When we have Chef Dylan, Dylan was cooking for us every single night. It was great, but it took a ton of time. We lost a lot of time, and then Dylan has to do this himself, which takes him away from doing, other stuff that's more important, which is actually making the movie. And this one, I really think we kind of nailed food. We have a certain budget. I think it was like $100, $150 a day for I think we had 8 actors at a time for this one. So Dylan, you kind of want to go over how you make sure everyone's getting the food that they want. Because this is another big thing. The actors are, especially on a low budget set like ours, they're giving their time. They're giving these crazy performances, emotional performances. They're working 12 hours a day. You have to make sure they're eating stuff that they want. So Dylan, kind of go over how we let them select the food, the snacks that they do, and how we kind of really mastered the food process with this movie.
Yeah, so for this one, we just kind of figured out to do basic breakfast and lunch stuff, that being eggs and bacon and stuff for toast and bagels for breakfast, and then for lunch, having sandwich meats, bread, chips, and then other things to snack on. The way we do the snacks, because in the past, there's one movie in particular I remember we took the 4 cast members, myself included, all to the grocery store at the same time. And we all went fucking nuts and just started filling up this cart. Not a good idea. We moved quickly away from that one. So now what we do is every day we'll make sure each person has a snack for that day that they can have at a random point. If dinner's not ready but they're feeling a little peckish, they can grab that. Or if it's later in the night and they need a little something to keep going, they have something accessible that they enjoy. So we do that, and then for the dinner meals, we splurge a little bit more on that, just to make sure everybody's getting, fuel, because again, it's our responsibility to keep them fed. We got to make sure that they're eating relatively decent enough to where they're not feeling like crap every day, but are still getting the energy that they need from it at the perfect time. So for this one, we had a lot of stuff that we were filming during the day, but then it kind of switched over into a night shoot a little bit. So we adjusted the dinner time to be right in the middle of the shoot where we could take a break appropriately, eat some food, feel re-energized, and go. We used Easy Cater, Uber Eats, DoorDash, stuff like that. Not to deliver. The delivery fees will kill you on a budget like 150 to 100 a day, especially on days that you have large amounts of people. So this one, the one thing I would fix about it is I need to look at where I'm picking these things up a little bit better, and there needs to not be a hurricane in Georgia while we're doing this, because there were a couple nights I got stuck going to pick up food for an hour, one night, 2 hours. That'd be the one thing I adjusted, but we used apps like that to kind of schedule pickup times, and with that you can pick a restaurant, kind of walk around, give each person a couple options, select for them. If, for instance, if we're ordering wings and we have somebody that doesn't really eat chicken wings and they don't want the cauliflower wings, finding a substitution at the same time to be delivered, because that one won't kill you as long as you're staying within your budget. So I'm going to pick up the bulk of food. If we have the side order, it's being delivered at the same time, and just making sure we're staying fed, staying within that budget. Larger days, getting more shareable meals, and then on days with fewer people on set, getting something a little bit more personalized, to give people a variety of things. And then it worked out for us because we were on the cusp of having a bit more waste than we would have liked. Luckily, the cast for this one were super cool about it, super understanding. They suggested doing a leftover night on the last night so we could get rid of some of that food that was left over that would have ended up being tossed. So shout out to them for being cool about that and helping us manage our waste. We hate when we buy a bunch of food and nobody can take it, and it just kind of goes nowhere. It drives us nuts. So shout out to them guys.
So we had another successful day here. We're well ahead of schedule. Everything's feeling good, but again, it is no time to relax because now we have started with the easy stuff. We are on day 4, and day 4 again is the middle part of this movie. This was a 9-day shoot. It's where we start the special effects. So before we hop into special effects, we brought in a new actor on Pete. So I want Dylan to kind of talk about, we've worked with the main core right now for about 3 days. They know our language, they know our vibe. Anytime you bring someone else on, especially someone who I haven't worked with before with Pete, it's making sure they're comfortable with our process and, they feel like, they're getting along with us and they're a part of our crew because he's now feeling that nervousness that we felt a couple days ago, but now we are all adjusted and comfortable with each other. There can be a little bit of awkwardness in there, and usually Dylan does a good job of handling that and making sure everyone's comfortable. So Dylan, let's go over like when we bring on a new actor into set, especially after we've been working with the core group of people for so long.
Yeah, so you have somebody that has basically a full battery showing up on set while everybody else is um, I wouldn't say half, I'd say like 70%. But they are sick of seeing our faces if it's not time to film. Unlike your new variable, your wild card showing up in the middle of it, especially if they're there for a long period of time, they're not there for their actors, because there is a bit of a difference between having somebody come in the middle of the week for one day versus coming in to stay for a couple days. The approach is a little bit different. So it's just kind of letting them know where everybody's at, explaining to them the headspace that the whole orchestra is in, where we're all just locked in, motivated, ready to go, facing the heavy shit now. So just making sure that they understand the headspace that we're in. If they're ever trying to talk to someone that they haven't really encountered yet and they seem a little cold, it's just because they are motivated and locked in at the time. Introducing them to everyone, getting them familiar with who they will be playing alongside these scenes with. So that way, when they are practicing themselves, they can kind of practice or imagine who they're speaking to. So that way, next time they see them, they can start getting those emotions that they have towards each person ready to go. Just making sure everybody's comfortable. Takes a little bit of time. Luckily, most of the time when we have somebody new come in, we have a couple hours before we start filming that they get to kind of explore the space, see some of the stuff that we've already done, and hear about what we're getting ready to do. So they know to, just be ready for their stuff, and as kindly as possible, stay out of the way while we're cranking, just because we're in such a spot right now. And we've never had an issue with it. Pete was great for this, coming in the middle of it. Had some great stories too, so it's like slight little battery recharges for us, just giving us a little jolt every now and then, with some of the stuff he'd say. He was also big on the jokes, so he had like these really ridiculous jokes. Some of them not so great, most of them pretty good. So nice little thing to have on set midway through the week when everybody's just locked into work mode.
Yeah, I mean, Pete was great. He fit right in, so like honestly, not a problem at all. But you do want to make sure everyone's comfortable. And like Dylan said, we are on a different energy level than they are. There's a different comfort level, and we just want to make sure everyone feels safe and they feel comfortable and they're ready to go. So we are in the middle of the shoot. Now we start doing the heavy special effects stuff. So we had a picture fall, and we're going to basically stab someone in the neck. This is Tagen's moment to shine here. And we had this special effect going. And anytime we have special effects, it takes a lot of time. Just my rule of thumb is if it's just me and an actor for one page, it's going to be 1 hour. If it's me and an actor and it's 2 pages, it can be 2 hours. If it's me and and 2 actors and it's 1 page, it's 2 hours. If it's special effects, it gets thrown out the window because it just takes a long time to we work backwards. Or we don't work backwards, we work forwards, but it's small little pieces to get them to land in the exact spot that we need to have this special effect happen. It's a lot of shots. This was a cinematic movie. This was not found footage like you've done before. So Tegan, why don't you kind of go over, how we had to get that all set up. We had to choreograph a fight, and basically there was a scuffle. We had a firearm involved in this one, and we had a stab. That turned out absolutely fantastic. But Tegan, why don't you kind of go in the process of pretty much how we came up with this and then how we kind of executed it.
Okay. So I think to start, when we were going through the script, we knew Matt's character and Pete's character were going to have to fight, and in some way, Matt was going to have to die.
Spoilers.
Sorry. At that point, we had a very rough idea of what this Airbnb was going to look like. So how we were going to pull off this kill was like had to make sense as far as like what would be accessible. We don't know what was in this house, if there was going to be a spot for us to put something there that would make sense. And we kind of got lucky to where the picture frame was going to hang and where it could fall just so happened to be a perfect spot for where Matt could lay. And so we went with the broken piece of the picture frame for his kill. And so with that, of course, we have the two of them that need to get in a scuffle before he meets his demise. I absolutely always will advocate for blocking it out before you put any kind of makeup on. Um, our prosthetics have gotten to a really good place. We do silicone prosthetics now with professional grade um, adhesive. But even still, our actors, I think Matt specifically, was in a hoodie, a t-shirt, a hoodie, and another overlayer because this film was set in fall or spring. So for the and he had gloves on, which always makes your body temperature rise. He's moving around. He has to do this fight. He's gonna be sweating. So anytime an actor's sweating, that's gonna compromise the longevity of the prosthetic. So making sure that they block this out, we can make sure that we can film anything we possibly can up until the point that we can get a cutaway to apply the prosthetic. Because something like a stab too, you can't just magically have a prosthetic appear when there wasn't one there before. So with cinematic, we were able to have the chance to do a good cutaway, and because we did the blocking, we found the perfect spot to do it, which gave us an opportunity too. While I took Matt up to get his prosthetic applied, Brendan was able to figure out other things he could do with the other actors in the meantime to keep them going, because the second everyone kind of sits down, especially when someone's getting their makeup done, it kind of drains the life out of you. You've been working, you've been on your feet for a couple hours. When you sit down and you're sitting down for a while, it's usually about 45 minutes to an hour to get these prosthetics applied, sometimes longer when you have to run a blood pump underneath, which we had to do for Matt. So we want to make sure we keep that energy up. So he was able to film some stuff with everyone else while I got the prosthetic applied to Matt. Um, Matt's always great in the chair. He knows what to expect. I like to over-explain a lot of the time when I'm putting prosthetics on because not everyone has had special effects makeup done before. So I like to explain to them what they're going to experience as far as feeling and smell, what it's going to feel like once it's actually on. But again, I've worked with Matt before. This, I think, was his second film with us. And we did a very similar prosthetic in a very similar location on his body before. So he was prepared. We gave him a rundown on the blood pump, how it's gonna come out, that it's gonna get over his hoodie and on his floor. He's gonna get wet. He's gonna get sticky. And he was a champ. He was ready for it, and it looked really good. So happy about that.
No, it turned out fantastic, and that scene's gonna be absolutely fantastic. Anytime you have a choreographed scene like that, it's very hard for indie filmmakers, just because it's just hard for me to shoot that. But we've gotten pretty good at it. Dylan's really good at choreographing the fight scenes. So again, fantastic day. Worked 12 hours, got a really hard special effects done. The next day, again, we have another special effects. This was the ankle stab. There's always scenes in the movie that I'm not very confident in the way that we can do this. And not in Tagen's abilities, but just in like my abilities to shoot this. We started this podcast basically by saying, we didn't really know where we wanted to shoot this. And the ankle stab, the Achilles stab is a big part of this movie because we had to immobilize the homeowner. And we had to do that properly, and we wanted something nasty and gory. And I was kind of nervous on this one because it's just hard for me to shoot. To put that camera on the ground, we lose all the depth of field to get it to match. There was a million little cuts in there to kind of make it look realistic. I know we had a lot of issues with like getting the knife to go through the shirt, how we were going to film it, where Madison was going to be for this stuff. It was not easy at all. So I'll turn it over again to Tagen to kind of go through how we did we did this scene and how we kind of went through it. And again, 2 back-to-back heavy special effects stuff. But in the way we scheduled this, these had priority. If we just got these done and this is the only thing we got done that night, it was a win. But one thing quickly before she had said something that I wanted to highlight is we did Echoes of Evil, where she had to basically put the makeup on Grace to turn her into a demon. I failed to schedule properly for this one, and so while she was putting on the makeup, we didn't have anything else to shoot with the other actors. And we were just sitting around for 3 hours or how long it took to basically do the prosthetic. At the end of this movie, we had a rush, and it was just terrible, and we had a long days of just shooting a ton of stuff that was just rushed. The movie turned out fantastic, thank God, but we were like, never do that again. So on the schedule, if you have an actor doing prosthetics, if you have someone doing special effects that's going to be in the makeup chair, make sure you schedule stuff with the other actors. While she was putting on the prosthetics on Pete, I was working with Madison and Matt Pearl. And if there was anything with Madison, I was working with Pete or Matt Pearl. We were always constantly working with other people. We scheduled around that way, and it made this one a lot better, because if you have your one main actor in the seat, the makeup chair, and you're not doing anything else, that's just wasted time. And you have to really look at that. It's a lesson we learned. It was a hard lesson to learn. And thank God that nothing bad happened when we were there, but it's just something that we really kind of picked up on. So I'll turn over to Tagen. This is back-to-back heavy special effects. So let's talk about the Achilles cut.
Yeah. So, perfectly honest, I did not want to do this effect from the beginning. Dylan, I believe, pitched it in a meeting we were having in pre-production to Brendan, and I was behind the camera like, no, 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 no. Mostly because something like this specific effect is very like specific, and it has to be realistic looking and raw looking, because otherwise it can look very cheesy very easily. And so the biggest thing from the jump was figuring out how we can do this to make it look the most realistic. And at first we kind of wanted to do very similar to what they did in Pet Cemetery, which is they used the prosthetic leg. However, just based off of time constraints, we weren't able to do that, and make it look the way we wanted it to look. So we had to kind of pivot, and that was just making a prosthetic for the after effect, and then working with Brendan and Pete and kind of choreographing how we can cheat and make little tiny cuts and film different little pieces of it that can kind of blend together to sell the effect. And then when we got to the Airbnb, yeah, the biggest thing was where we were going to do this effect. Because basically she had to take her little knife. I don't, what was it? A dagger. Yeah, it was a very long, like pointed dagger. And stab him in the Achilles and pull out. The boys really wanted it on the stairs, which in hindsight, like, yes, it would have been a really cool shot, but logistically, where I was running into issues was I did not think the effect would be sold it realistically. Like, if because the rungs of the railing were there, she would not be able to get her hand in there and have enough force to cut this Achilles. Also, where the front door was positioned and where his body would be laying and where Matt's dead body would have had to be in the background, and blood dripping down like the stair onto um like the walls and everything. We didn't want to get into that. I didn't want to get into that. I was worried about like the continuity and the reset. Not that Brendan wasn't, but it was for him filming the shot, it made so much more sense. But for the logistic and realism part of it, it didn't make sense. So we kind of had to try and figure out other places it would make sense. And we looked at the dining room table, and we thought, okay, if we shoot low to the ground and we have Madison hide under the table with this knife, she could get that force, and it would make sense for him to be walking by and not see her right away, and so she could sneak up on him. Because the other problem with the stairs was he would see her right away most of the time, unless we filmed him coming down the stairs a very specific, kind of unnatural position. So it was just making sure that it would make sense not only for us filming and not only for the effect, but for the viewer as well. And I think we ended up on a pretty good compromise of having her under the table. Um, we did have to pre-rip his pants because we were hoping we'd be able to cut his pants with the knife, but the knife just ended up not being sharp enough. And of course, we always want to put actor safety first, so we didn't want to put Pete or Madison in a compromising spot over a pant cut. So we just pre-cut the pant. We put some blood on it. To really sell the knife going through it. And I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but from what I saw in person, it looked really good. We had the blood pump rigged under his prosthetic on the leg, which added a whole other element of difficulty to it because not only did we have Pete walking by and having to get stabbed in the leg, we had to figure out how he would gracefully fall to the ground and pull his pant leg up so he could see it, and show that it was bleeding actively without showing the blood pump or having him fall and hurt himself. So it was all a little bit of everyone working together and using full brain power in that moment. So it took a lot of out of us physically and mentally, especially right after a day of already doing a lot of special effects.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why we blocked this out first when we have fresh minds. Because if we were trying to, again, trying to figure this stuff out, the logistics of this, on day 5 or 6, wherever day this was, we only have 3 brain cells right now, and on that day we were probably down to 1 brain cell between all 3 of us. So it would not have been good, but it turned out really well. I was very, very happy with it. So now we had a lot of stuff in this garage. The garage was separated behind this great door that Havoc Props, Howard Hawkins, designed for us. Absolutely fantastic. Couldn't be happier with that. But we had to take this large garage and make it look full of stuff. And it has to look creepy, and it has to be basically this guy's kill or kidnapping room. So Dylan is our resident builder. He built the secret room in the murder house, which it took him a while to do it. There's a lot of struggle in there, but it turned out fantastic in the movie. It looked incredible. And honestly, one of the selling points when we did talk to distribution was the fact that they're like, how did you find a house with a secret room? And little did they know Dylan built that room through a lot of trials and tribulations. But we needed this garage to be built out. Something we've learned is to use the painter's tarps and stuff on the camera. It looks really cool because it kind of reflects the light and it kind of makes it look very Dextery. That's one thing we did. But Dylan, how did you kind of build that out with? Because we had no budget for this. Basically, we were just moving stuff from the house into this garage as well as getting anything we could because it was a big part of the intro of this movie and a lot of scenes in this movie. So, Dylan, how did you kind of go into set decoration and kind of build that out?
All right, so the first thing was we had an Airbnb that had a lot of security cameras. So we can't just walk into an Airbnb with 2 big ass doors without, letting them know, hey, we're going to be taking one of your doors off the hinges and replacing it with one of our own. But we'll put everything back to normal. So that's usually the first step. The second step was we had grabbed a lot of the props from storage. Tagen had thrown a lot of those into a chest. And then I went to Walmart and bought a bunch of boxes and painter's tarp. Me and Tagen went and did that. And then it was just a matter of figuring out how to use these materials to maximize the effect that we were going for and really turn this garage into a creepy demon containment center. So what ended up happening is we got into another lovely little debate about which direction we should be putting the boxes. We had an idea for a maze at one point. That would have been terrible. Glad we didn't do that. Then we had an idea to do the long way because it was a 3-car garage. So doing it the long way and hiding it on the other side of it so they have more space to walk. That didn't really work. And then finally we settled with Tagen's idea of just cutting the garage in half, Basically, how we did that is we put painter's tarp all the way across the top of the garage and then put a bunch of boxes like a wall, makeshift wall, and then creating a little tunnel where they could walk through, and then filling out the space with all of the creepy props that we have accumulated. Tagen was responsible for that because at this point I had so much of a headache about this garage that I couldn't do it. So she took over and kind of dressed it up, made it look nice, took the pictures for continuity. Continuity got destroyed immediately after we stepped foot in there. It happens, but we try our best not to do that anymore. Ended up looking like a workspace in one half, and then the back half, we were able to fully plastic wrap up that section of the garage. That way, when we had some effects that we will talk about later in that space, the blood wasn't going everywhere and staining the garage floor, like that has happened in previous films where we are on the last day pressure washing a stranger's garage to make sure that there's no trace of fake blood. Luckily, we were able to fight that this time in a much easier way, which I will pass to Taken to talk about the set dressing a little bit, if you want.
Okay.
Double crush.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think right off, ever since first started working with Brendan, the first thing we will go over anytime we're using any kind of blood is making sure that you have like something to protect whatever it is or wherever it is we're spraying the blood. I think the first movie we did Bigfoot, we didn't really have to worry about it because we were outside in the woods. We've done that a couple times, but anytime you're in like someone else's property, you don't want to fuck it up. And fake blood, unless you're buying the really, really, really professional fake blood that is like $250 a gallon, it's gonna leave some trace that it was there. It's mostly red dyes and a little bit of blue and yellow dyes in these bloods. So it's gonna stain. So always like try to prevent whatever you can with tarps. Tarps are your best friend, especially in a horror movie. You know, like he said earlier, very Dexter vibe. You can get away with having creepy painters tarps everywhere. Um, and also just researching, I think for this one we researched the ingredients. Dylan had suggested making sure we look up the ingredients for the blood ahead of time and seeing what will best remove blood. We found out that 70% isopropyl alcohol works like magic to clean up our fake blood that we use on any kind of hard surface. So that was, yeah, that was a game changer. And then, yeah, as far as the garage, I mean, I think ideally we would love to have found a whole bunch of old furniture and creepy things to put in this garage, but you have to like still be realistic about it because yes, we can go. I think that was our original idea was go to a bunch of yard sales and find free stuff or go to Goodwill and pick up some cool stuff. But then at the end of the day, like at the end of the week when we're finished filming, what are we going to do with all this stuff? We can't leave it at the Airbnb. We can't leave it at the end of their yard and hope someone else grabs it. And we can't most of the time take it to the dump because that's a bunch of extra costs that we don't need to add. So you just kind of have to work with what you have. So at the end of the day, I think we made the garage as creepy as we could with what we had, which Dylan went out and got the tarps and the boxes. We used a whole bunch of props that we had from other films. We used the box from a previous movie that Havoc did, ladders, chains, books, cassettes, old paperwork. Just like we even used some of the trash that we compiled on set and put them in bags in a corner because why not? We had it and it made it look gross and grungy. So, yeah, just using what you have and making it look as good as possible.
And it turned out really good because, again, set decoration is something that takes us from our basically no budget to something that looks like $1 million. There are the small wins that we can take care of, and that is one of them, trying to make our stuff look as realistic as possible. They did a great job. So the next night, we have another new actor coming in. This is an intro scene. If you heard me talk about this stuff before, the intro scenes are the most important part of our movies. Our watchers basically will give us 3 minutes of time. And, you know, you can if you're making a drama, if you're making something else, or if you have a theater movie, this advice doesn't apply to you. But for us, horror watchers want to watch a movie, get drawn into it right away, and go. There is a big difference in data from our movies with a weak intro versus something that's very strong. We've done other movies. I think Last Cabin is our best intro as far as watch wise. And that movie has done absolutely phenomenal. So the intro hook is so crucial to basically get these viewers who are watching this stuff on Tubi or for free, to basically just get into these movies as quickly as possible. When we started this one, I was like, okay, it's a simple wake up scene. This girl gets kidnapped. And it's 2 actors, but it's very minimal dialogue. It's just showing that she's waking up and getting kidnapped. And then we're going to go out and basically start from the back end where we have a white van go and kidnap her. So I was saying, I think her start time was like 6 o'clock. And I was like, all right, by 9:30, we'll be done with this 3.5 hours. Easy peasy. At this point, we are cruising. We are right on schedule. There are no issues. And it just took a lot longer to kind of get going, to get the flow. I wasn't doing my best work with the camera. We're kind of getting a little bit tired at this time. We finally get the first part of it done, and we go out there with the van, and it starts downpouring, right? And we had to go back, and it's midnight at this time. I'm getting frustrated. And we're like almost 4 or 5 hours. I think we finished at 2 a.m. in the morning. And it doesn't seem like much. We're still ahead. But this caused us to we lost 5 or 6 hours from the shoot. And instead of finishing at, 9 or 10 o'clock on the last day, it pushed us to 2 a.m. And it made Tagen have to put Grace in demon makeup twice. And so this is such a small little scene. There really wasn't any kind of big issues. It just kind of rained and we just had a hard time getting going. And it almost really messed up this shoot. So you can see we scheduled everything to perfection up until this point. Everything was there. We did 12 hours a day, and just one little small thing that we had no control over almost wrecked this shoot, and it made Tagen hate me because I had to put Grace back in makeup again. And we didn't want to have any special effects on the last day because, once again, I said you want to come down. That last day should be pickups. It should be inserts. It should be everything easy. And instead, we had to basically do the final scene of this movie, which we never want to do. So it's just something you guys need to consider, is that anything can go wrong at any time, and you really have to be on top of it. If we were behind at any point and got to this thing and it took this long, we would be screwed. I mean, we'd have to do pickups, and you never want to do pickups because it's so expensive to do pickups. So we did that. And at that point, Grace started to get into demon makeup, and Grace has done 3 movies with us now. I try and get rid of her all the time. She keeps coming back, but we wanted to have the demon in this movie because Echoes of Evil did so well. It looked so good. The makeup, honestly, I watched The New Exorcist. It looked better than The New Exorcist. So shout out to Tagen. And how Grace plays this demon is just absolutely fantastic. It is the best thing ever. So how, talking to distribution and producers on getting this movie to where it needed to go, this was kind of where we started. I said, well, what if, they break into this house and we have a demon played it? At that point, it wasn't Grace. But it became very quickly apparent that the only person I wanted to do this was Grace. So, Tagen, why don't you talk about, the makeup with the demon and how you kind of apply that in the whole process, because it's quite the process to make this transformation, to make it happen and make it look as realistic as possible.
Well, that day in general was kind of back and forth, because not only did we have to put Grace in full makeup by the end of it, we also had the intro person, had some light makeup, blood and dirt and stuff. And then Pete had makeup that we were putting him in and out of. We had to make sure we were lining it up to where, because he had a couple scuffles with Matt where he got beat up in the face. So we had to make sure, we were lining that up and getting him in and out of makeup at the appropriate times. And then, yeah, Grace is the biggest one. I think we did the almost identical, very, very similar makeup to what we did for her in Echoes of Evil for this one. I think we changed the contact color and did a couple different variations of similar prosthetics for her. But in general, it was still the same kind of big bulk of a job. It's only me, the one artist, so I have to make sure I'm applying. I think we did in total 5 or 6 silicone prosthetics on her. Um, in various different places, a couple on her face, some on her neck and chest, some on her legs and arms. So just getting the prosthetics on and making sure that they're secure, so as she moves and sweats and cries or whatever else she does, they're going to stay in place, already takes like 45 minutes to an hour, depending on where they're going and how big they are. And then you have to go through and color match everything so that it looks like it actually blends into her skin. And then painting the demon stuff, which was a combination of alcohol paints and airbrush paints and blood. Um, Making sure that the placements make sense and getting her nails and her knuckles. And she was wearing capri pants, so we had to make sure we were covering her legs all the way down to her socks. The back of her neck that might show if her hair moves. Greasing her hair up and getting her hair and her scalp bloody, because it wouldn't make sense for this fully gross demon to have nice, maybe it's Maybelline hair, you know? So just all the little intricate parts that added together, I think in total it ended up being 2.5 hours roughly. And that's working quickly. Um, but we got it done and we were able, I think the rain actually kind of helped us a little bit. It gave us a little extra time to do some final touches on Grace and just make her look as creepy as possible.
Nah, she did fantastic. And always like having an actor who can go in that chair and do that multiple times is, awesome in itself. And Grace is absolute superstar. And she looked great. Once again, my biggest issue with The Last of Us new season was everybody had really nice clothing and really nice hair. It is the apocalypse. This is a demon chick. She should not have nice hair. So we did mess up Grace's hair and it looked fantastic. The look was great. One thing I was pushing for was the yellow contact eyes, just because we had issues with red with Andrew in the last one. But I always keep an open mind, and it's very easy to test. Tagen put in the yellow one and the red one, and I looked at it once, and it was apparent that Tagen was correct, and the red ones were just much better. She should have bet a pickleback on it, but she didn't, so she loses. We had at the end of this night, we had a big scene between the homeowner Pete and Grace in full demon makeup where she basically rips his throat out. At this point, I'm pretty cooked. My brain is not working very well. For the majority of these shoots, 80% of the time I know what I'm doing, or I have a high confidence level in what I'm doing is correct, just because I've made a lot of these and I understand what we need to do. If I don't have any idea, or I'll get to the point where I just have no idea how to do something, and I turn to Dylan and I say, all right, Dylan, how are we going to do this? Because I have no clue at all. We needed to get the homeowner to smack Madison's character in the back of the head with a rifle butt. She needed to fall on a specific location on top of our murder rug, which basically cleans up all the blood, and Pete had to be over in a certain angle so that Grace could come by and slit her throat. That's a lot of movement. That's a lot of stuff. At this point, just thinking about this was, you can see the steam coming from my head. So Dylan, I always turn to him. He knows how to kind of do this. He has a very good eye for how we get into these shots. And it's just really nice to bounce, ideas off somebody, because when my brain's just not working, it's not working. And there's not a lot to work with just in general. So Dylan, you want to kind of talk about how we kind of get through these shots, especially ones with little pieces like this, where I turned to him and said, are we getting everything? Am I missing something? And it's just having another set of eyes on there just gives me that much more confidence that between, our two brain cells, we can get this done.
Yeah, at this point, luckily, Brendan works 80% of the time with his brain. I only work 20%, so I put my stuff in reserve mode for times like these. This one was really tricky, though. I think it needed all three of us, and then the actors even were weighing in on certain things, which great to have, but when it's like stressful time, we have to like lock in and really try to figure out how to get it done. I remember one of the key parts of this was the shotgun smack. We were trying to figure out how to do that in a wide, but also not anything against Pete. I wouldn't trust a single actor with a real shotgun swinging it at another actor's head. So I insisted on being the one to swing it at her head because we had to get pretty close. The shot was pretty tight, and that took a good amount of time. Once we got that, we figured out how she could fall, both in a way that makes real world sense and also works for us in the movie to where she has a little bit of space to crawl and there's a little bit of movement available to her for her portion of the scene, while also making sure that we can hide Grace somewhere. Grace is very tall, really hard to hide her in certain spots. Luckily, this area, high ceilings, so we were able to just tuck her around the corner, get Pete into a position to where he can get his throat ripped. That's another one of those things where we talk about actor safety and comfort and everything. When you have two people that don't know each other very well, and you have to trust a stranger to get on top of you with a shotgun and straddle you and pretend to choke you, you got to go over some safety bits for that. So that's another element in it. It's just a lot of different factors for something that seems simple. I wouldn't even say it snuck up on us because we just kind of know how these things go at this point. But if you're not expecting it, like it'll surprise you with how complicated some of the stuff can be. This one we were able to figure out after, I want to say, about an hour and lots of ideas back and forth, a little bit of some shouting, and then we got there. But it ended up looking great. We were able to get the effects that we needed done while also conveying the struggle that the characters were having, making sure Pete looked good for his death scene was a big thing. He really wanted to make sure he looked good dead. So we got that taken care of. And then I want to say Pete was also leaving at the same time, or was that the next day? Okay, we'll save that for the next day.
Yeah, so I think our days are kind of getting mixed up because, yeah, so really this day that I'm going to talk about now happened before that day. But Dylan does have a good story about when we should wrap actors and how we wrap actors. But this day that I'm talking about we lost track of it, but basically was a huge scene in the garage where they discover Grace. We have all this special effects and makeup stuff in there. Then we have Andrew's death scene, and we have a fight scene all in this garage. This is kind of crazy. So I'll turn it over to Tagen first to talk a little bit about the shotgun effect that we wanted to have with Andrew and how we kind of operated with that. And I think it turned out absolutely fantastic. And then we'll turn it over to Dylan to talk a little bit about how we blocked everything out, because this was a massive scene. We had, I think, 4 actors all in there. We had just crazy moving parts. Like, this was a huge segment with a ton of stuff. Honestly, I'm trying to think. I think this might be the most complicated scene we've ever shot with DBS, just because it was like moving parts, things coming out, special effects, a fight scene, all within this, set that we kind of decorated with in the garage. So we'll start with Tagen and the shotgun blast to the chest.
I was really excited about this one. I think initially when we started planning this one out too, we knew it wasn't going to be like a normal shotgun blast because it had to be something he could not absolutely recover from. And I think from the jump we wanted to do blasting his face off. Um, but unfortunately, again, due to just like time constraints, I think we really only have about a month of pre-production before we are on set. So it doesn't leave a lot of time to face cast a lot of these actors. So we kind of have to do what we can with what we have, which is totally fine. It works out. I do a lot of flat molds, and it works out really well a lot of the time. And then this specific piece for Andrew, I spent a lot of time researching what slug shot was it? Slug shot gunshot wounds would look like. Um, pretty similar to a normal gunshot wound, except way bigger, way wider. And I think Dylan and I debated back and forth for a couple times on whether it should be an entry wound or an exit wound, based on like what would look the coolest. But I think we ended up going with an exit wound because it made the most sense for blood splatter, how we could have the homeowner come up and sneak up behind him without him seeing it. Because if you see someone pointing a shotgun right at you, your first instinct is to move, not just stand there and let him shoot you. Um, so we had to take into consideration like what was happening in the scene too. So we ended up sculpting this really cool piece that went right on Andrew's stomach. We covered up his belly button and everything to kind of even give it a little bit more depth, and we rigged it with this big blood pump underneath. And I'm sure we'll get back to it, but we did a similar blood pump with Pete. And I didn't want what happened with Pete's effect to happen with Andrew. The blood pump on Pete's effect ended up getting clogged, and there was no blood spray. Because this was such a big effect with Andrew, yes, we can add some blood in post, but it's not going to be the same if there's no blood at all for practical effects wise. So I was desperate to make sure that this one worked. So I took extra time applying it to him, making sure that everything there was no kinks in the tubing. It ran up and over him properly. And then the next big thing was getting him in the garage and placing him in a place that would make sense to where I'm hidden, because I have this giant fire extinguisher pressurized behind him with this cord coming out of the back of his shirt, but Pete's also supposed to be behind him with the shotgun tip. So we had to make sure we kind of finesse that a little bit. Brendan ended up getting a really good angle to where he couldn't see me at all. You just saw Andrew, and then we got a couple takes. At first, the blood pump was not working. But once we kind of got Andrew kind of started throwing himself into the movement a little bit more moving forward, we made some extra adjustments on the go, and ended up making the holes big enough for all the blood to come through. And I think once we got it going, it was pretty gnarly. You'll have to add some photos on Instagram or something after, but there's a very good reason we say put down tarps, because this blood went everywhere. The walls were covered, the floors were covered. If we had had actors in front of them, they would have been covered, which was also another huge debate, was setting up the scene for this to make sense to where the friends of this person are seeing them get shot, but they're also not going to get covered in blood, because anytime you get actors covered in blood, that makes the reset an even bigger thing. So we had to kind of put them to the side, but I think we ended up getting like the best shot we could to make everything work.
Yeah, man, it turned out great. So, Dylan, you want to kind of go over the blocking, especially with the fight scene? Because we had they break in, they see this girl, they try and pull the girl out, then they get taken hostage. Then we have the special effects. Then we have a fight scene, and we stab a guy in the leg with a screwdriver. All this stuff happens in this small little location. And again, this is something where we go into this, I look at this and I go, oh boy, this is like, buckle in, because this is going to be tough. And, I kind of work with Dylan, because he knows how to basically do this stuff. And it's just kind of like, all right, not only how do we want to do it, but what's the best way to do it? Because again, we don't have like a Hollywood budget. This isn't a custom, warehouse on a set where we can pick and choose where we want to go. This is what we have. It's bare bones. It's very small. How do we do all this stuff going through it? And it's kind of like you start with, this clay block basically, and we're just chiseling away until we finally get it. But it is a process, man. So Dylan, kind of go over when you kind of enter into this scene, and it's just like, oh my God, we have, a 6-minute scene, and this probably was close to 40 or 50 shots, if not more, just because it's all broken up. We spent most of the day here, so kind of go into your philosophy. I'm kind of going to something very difficult like this.
The first thing I'll say is when he first said that this one was the most complicated, I think this was so traumatic because in my memory, I think I blocked it out. In my head, this took 20 minutes. Like, I was like, oh, this took 20 minutes. This didn't take that long. Then I started trying to replay it, and I'm remembering just how difficult it was. So, as he mentioned, we had all this stuff going on in one little area. There's a lot of setup, but there is a bit of luck that I want to mention. So, we were talking about where to kill Andrew's character in a place to where he was out of the way if we ever had to come back in the garage, which we did at certain points of the film as well. And we got a little lucky. I think we kind of put it on the back burner when we were discussing it until we kind of figured out the garage layout. Then once we figured out how we were decorating the garage, it worked itself out in a way that he just hid behind the wall of boxes, and we just didn't have them go back into the creepy demon area of it again. So there's fun little things like that where it's just like sometimes it just works out, man. This one we had to get them into the space. We had to deal with the audio of them stepping on the tarp, figuring out how to do the light because it went over one of the mechanical doors for the garage, but the demon girl was on the other side of the garage. So making sure that we could light it properly. As Brendan mentioned before, this movie's mostly flashlights. Like we figured out the flashlights they just work. So the only times we utilized light was in this room or anytime that the characters had to have their flashlights off. So this was one of the ones that we had to use not only the prop light that created its own light, but also utilize the falcon eyes in a way to enhance that light, matching the color temp and everything like that. So once we figured that out, figured out where we could put everybody, got through the kill, there's a bit of reset that had to happen because if we have all these people running around in the space with all this blood on the ground, the actors are going to track it onto areas that aren't covered because that's what's required of them for the scene and stuff like this. So we had to cut out every piece of the tarp that was covered in blood and replace them, and then go and put blood back on it in particular spots. That way, once we shot that area, there was still blood, but not in the areas that we needed the actors to go through. We had to coordinate how we could get both Matt Pearl and Madison, Matt Pearl, who is very tall, to hide behind Grace. Luckily, again, she's tall. Makes it a little bit easier on Matt to hide, but they're slunk into this corner basically while there's a shotgun pointed at them. So we had to figure out how to do that dynamic to where it didn't feel super confined, but also felt close enough to where the threat was real. And then after that, we have the fight scene and the escape of everybody. So we have them messing with this custom chair that we have that was expertly put together. They're messing with the chair, trying to do stuff with that. That's a little bit complicated in itself because we're having to get shots of that. Then we're having to get shots of each of the characters individually. Then we're having to do a light flickering thing. So luckily the light flickering made the fight scene and the escape a little bit easier because we were able to hide little gaps of the action in darkness to try to get people where we needed. We also needed a way for them to hinder the homeowner again. So this wasn't planned, right? The screwdriver?
No, we figured it out.
We figured it out as we were there.
as we went.
So we figured out that there was a screwdriver near one of the characters, and when they were running, they could kick it. And the screwdriver goes over to the characters that are fighting, and they're able to grab it and stab it. So we just kind of cut a hole in it and then did what we could to make that look legit on the fly. We were able to get them out. It ended up being a lot. Like, that is a lot. Again, initially, I was like, oh, that took 20 minutes. That wasn't that bad. Now that I'm thinking about it, we were in there for a good amount of time. Luckily, the garage had AC. If it didn't, that would have been another thing that would have slowed us down drastically. So, a little bit of luck again.
Yeah, I mean, you can't spell DBS without PTSD. So basically, though, we have everything done now. You know, we have the last final day. And the only slowdown that we had, again, was that intro scene. And then we got rained on a little bit. But that set us back 5 or 6 hours. On our actual schedule for this one, if we didn't have that setback, we would have had no special effects on this day. We had no makeup on this day. It would have been all easy pickups. We have an editor, Jeff, who edits the movie as we are working on it. So he is working remotely and making sure basically that we have everything we need. He's creating a list of pickup shots or stuff that we kind of want to put in there. I myself am mentally putting in pickup shots. We had to do a redo a scene where one of the actors forgot to put their gloves on, Madison. So basically, it's just all small stuff. It's real easy. But the fact that, we were just a little bit behind, only 5 hours really kind of backed us up to the point where now Tagen had to go apply demon makeup back on Grace for 3 hours, and we had to do 2 scenes with Grace, which were easy, where basically she has a wound and then she kind of bleeds out. But we also had the finale of the movie, which was the most precious scene to me. The whole movie, basically reason for the movie comes down to one scene at the end, which is the deal scene. And Grace does have to be in full makeup. I didn't want to save it to the end, but it kind of worked out because we did have a little bit more time to kind of work on it. Grace was in full acting mode along with Madison. They're very comfortable with each other. And I think we got a great scene, but if we scheduled this as efficiently as you possibly could. There's nothing else that we could have done. And we still had issues. We still wrapped at 2 a.m. So, I'm going to turn it over to Dylan because he has a good story about Pete. Pete did rap on this day, though. He left before everyone else, before we had the actual rap party. We'll turn to that, and then we'll kind of go into basically what we learned about cleanup, and Tagen can handle that one.
Yeah, so we had Pete. We had done his final scene, and we wrapped him. We celebrated. He went up to his room to go get changed. We started doing something else. Then we realized, oh, fuck, we forgot something that we need with Pete. Hey, Pete, we lied. You're not actually wrapped. We need you to come back down. He had to get back into bloody clothes, right? And then beat up makeup. Had to reapply his stuff again, get him down there to do it again. He goes, we wrap him again, celebrate. It's awesome. He goes back up to shower, and I believe we were wrong again. And luckily this time we just needed his body there because we were debating whether or not I could be Pete, but I am a bigger dude than Pete is, so that wouldn't really work. So we had to get him to throw on clothes again. We psyched him out, and he had to go lay down on the ground for a little bit. I think it was like 5 minutes. Like, he literally had to go down there, lay down for 5 minutes more. But we were on. We pre-fired his wrap twice, and then we finally got him wrapped, and he was able to get on his way after 2 fake outs and 1 reapplication of makeup.
Yeah, I mean, just make sure when you wrap people, they are completely done. Pete is a champ, great guy for coming back and just laying there, being a dead body for a little bit because that shot did need that. So we're done at this point. One thing that we have really struggled with is cleanups. Echoes of Evil, we did that one, and basically we had to extend the rental agreement by 1 day for our location because we shot till the morning and we had nothing cleaned up, and it was not good. So we had the location scout basically extend us for 1 extra day. In the Shapeshifter movie, we basically trying to think. Oh no, wait. Murder House was the one where we actually did clean up, and then we had a big rap party, and we made such a big mess in the rap party that we had to clean up again. And we also had our location scout extend that period another day because we had to clean up again. This is twice now. The Shapeshifter movie, we learned a little bit, but we still had a huge mess, and then a bear went through the trash can and destroyed and threw the trash can all over the place, and we had to scramble to get that done. And I remember they had like the owners and everyone were coming back, and we had to basically be like, it was the bear's fault, it wasn't our fault, but it really was our fault too, because again, we had a rap party and we didn't clean up. So we tried to learn our lesson, and Tagen is in charge of this, and she took charge of it, and we did a really good job. So Tagen, go into cleanup, because this is going to affect every single indie crew out there. when you finish these movies, it is such a relief from myself. It's such a relief for myself. I don't care about anything else. I'm just like, all right, we're done. It's good. We got it. I'm happy. And that's not a good mindset. The actors are on cloud nine. They just wrapped a feature. A lot of the time with working with us, this is their first feature. They're through the moon. The drinks are flowing. The champagne's popping. The problem is there's blood everywhere and there's a mess everywhere and everyone has to leave super early in the morning. So, Tagen, how do we approach this one?
Well, it did take a couple times to figure it out, for one. But as both of you know, my brain never turns off and never stops thinking ahead. So my concern is always what it's going to be like on that last day. So always cleaning up anything you can ahead of time is super helpful. With that, you have to be conscious of continuity. You can't wrap rooms um, that you may potentially still use, because having to go back and forth setting something up and taking it back down and setting it back up, that could be a huge pain. Um, so it's more of just kind of planning ahead as to what is going to be expected for the last day. For this one, what I think made it so smooth was we knew for the most part what areas of the house we still needed to film in. And when we filmed that stuff and we're done with that stuff, we could go through and reset that part of the house while we filmed in other parts of the house. And we did thankfully have that huge AC'd garage, which was super nice because anything we were done with, we were able to gather all into one spot and be able to see it and pack it up according to like what we had. Props all went in one box, sheets went in one box. Um, and then the biggest rule that we have learned is we have to just be on ourselves for once we wrap, you can lose track of time very quickly. Because of course everyone wants to party, everyone wants to relax, but the second everyone sits down and starts relaxing, no one's going to want to get back up again. Everyone's going to think it's fine, we can do it tomorrow or we could do it later, but no one wants to, once you've sat down for an hour or two and had a drink or two, you don't want to go back and do it later. And you certainly don't want to do it the next morning when you have to get up and leave in an hour. So I was kind of a little mean and pushed everyone on this one to make sure that no one was partying until we got the majority of everything packed up and cleaned. And then even though we still had a wrap, we were still pretty kind of tough in the sense of we had a designated wrap party trash can. And we did bribe the actors a little bit on this one because, of course, when we bring them out, they're not here to clean. They're here to act. So it's always, but we got really lucky. The people we worked with are all, super understanding and down to be crew for the day or for a couple hours after they wrapped, and we're perfectly fine, going through their rooms, packing up their personal belongings, getting their rooms organized so that come the next morning, all we had to do was strip the sheets from the bed and it was fine. So I ended up working really well this time, and so now we're gonna do it forever.
I mean, I hope so because it worked out well. It's just that is one of the harder things to do is, convince everyone to get on the same page. But I think as long as you stick to it, all the actors were great on this one. They realized they were not getting the rap party until they helped us out or got all this stuff done, and we were in and out of there, and it was super smooth. So I couldn't be happier with that. Really, this was by far our best one. There's not a lot of notes on, what we can do to improve, which is good. Getting production to this level is absolutely fantastic because it allows you to focus on other things. And like I said, to get that budget up, to make it look like a Netflix movie, you have to have time, you have to be comfortable, you have to be relaxed. And, having a smooth shoot allows us to do that. So, hope we gave you guys a few tips. This is not theory. This is not a college class. This is not a Full Sail class. This is basically real stuff that we do on our sets every single time. and it works. This is stuff that works for us. It took us a long time to get it. We're not the smartest individuals, but we do learn after a while, and we've got it down pretty well. And at this point, when you have it like this, it's easy for me to scale up. It's easy for me to bring in more actors because I'm comfortable that I'm not going to light my money on fire. So hopefully we gave you some good tips. We are right about to film our 20th movie. So this is 2 movies in, I think, a little over 6 weeks, which is absolutely ridiculous. But, that's what we do here at DBS. So until next time, guys, thanks for listening. If you want to watch and support our stuff, please just watch any of our movies. Last Cabin is out on Amazon.
Forced to Death.
Forced to Death is for free on our YouTube channel. We have a whole bunch of free movies on our YouTube channel. If you want to see where we came from, Last Cabin does support us a little bit more, so Dylan's repping the shirt. Check that out. A Letterboxd review, a IMDb review would be great. I reply to all of them. Let us know, good, bad. We're just learning. We're trying to get better with each movie. That's our goal. So until next time, guys. I can't believe I messed up the exit. Until next time, guys, thank you and see you later.